Don Mazzella here again for Small Business Digest. Uh, in the papers recently, we've seen how um, the financial affairs are really starting to hurt small business. In particular, banks are starting to curtail their loans to small business. We have with us David Cody, who's here to talk about what's going on and maybe some ways of getting around it. David, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
First, as we always ask, Dave, tell us a little bit about yourself personally, then your company, what it does, and then finally a website.
Okay. Well, my personal story is born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts, educated in the Northeast, moved to New York in the early 90s and went through a management training program at Chemical Bank. So I am a banker and credit analyst by training, who then went off and spent 6-7 years in Asia, mostly trading derivatives and mostly in Hong Kong. Came back to New York in the late 90s and started a asset management firm called Fortress Investment Group with a handful of other folks in 2001, and have really since then been in the asset management and finance company business. And in many ways, that set of skills, credit, trading, asset management, capital raising, all came together in the pandemic when we formed Newity. The company that I co-own with my co-founder, Luc Lehay, is Newity, Newity. We were founded in the pandemic to help small businesses get access to the Paycheck Protection Program. And as many on this podcast are probably aware of, the Paycheck Protection Program was a very significant program set up and administered, set up by the government via the CARES Act, administered by the SBA, and then facilitated by banks and technology companies all over the country to help small businesses get access to the capital. And that capital was designed to provide some relief in what was an otherwise very challenging business environment. And so we really founded Newity to help small businesses. I think while we were doing it, the lessons that we learned were really about how little help there was in the financial services industry for the average small business, and what a significant impact we could have as an organization. We helped 115,000 underlying businesses work through their PPP loans through forgiveness. It's almost all complete, not quite yet. There are some, final loans that are to be, either forgiven and or put back to the various guarantors of the loans. But what it really taught us was two things. One, access to capital, access to resources, and access to growth in a way that was beyond the day-to-day of managing one small business was very difficult. And in fact, the programs that existed often were misunderstood and confusing. So really what we decided to do on the back of successfully helping 115,000 businesses through PPP was to help those same businesses and others get access to other SBA programs. And so we retooled our technology and our people and created a technology-enabled platform to help small businesses get access to the largest existing SBA program, which is the 7A Working Capital Program. And so as of today, we are one of the largest players in small balance SBA 7A loans. The role we play is as an LSP, not as a lender. We have a lending partner. We can actually behave as the facilitator for lots of lending partners. Today, we work with one. And what we do is really help small businesses pull together the information that's required to apply for a 7A loan, ultimately help them get the 7A loan, and then we service that loan through the life of the loan. So we really do everything but make the credit decision, on whether to extend that loan to the small business. And as you may know, and many of your members of your audience may know, the 7A product is a wonderful product for small businesses in terms of cost and structure. And the biggest difficulty is access. The biggest difficulty is, filling out the paperwork. And there are qualifications and requirements and all of that. And so, it's not, you have to apply, you have to qualify, you have to, meet a number of criteria, both from a credit score standpoint, as well as, sort of what I would call background, in terms of years in business and what have you. And we successfully transformed Newity from, an organization that had been solely focused on PPP to one that now is also focused on SBA 7A loans, as well as finding other areas where small businesses can access capital or access credits. A few months ago, we took our technology and our people and our process, and we applied it to the ERTC market. Employee retention tax credits were also born out of the CARES Act, but are administered by the IRS as opposed to the SBA. And in many ways is a very similar journey to applying for, getting and having a PPP loan forgiven, or applying for, getting and having a 7A loan serviced. And so, I'd say our second most active part of our business right now is helping, our 115,000 underlying businesses apply for and get their ERTC. That has been extremely rewarding. And I'd say, in sort of wrapping up who we are, I take the greatest pride as the co-founder of the company in the repeat relationships that we have. So part of our PPP strategy was we bought loans from banks that didn't want to service them. We bought 65 portfolios from 65 banks that didn't want to service the loans because that wasn't their core business. We then originated loans and ended up with 115,000 underlying, $11.4 billion worth of outstanding balance. And what we realized is that there were people who, we bought their loan from a bank, we got them a second PPP loan in round 2, we've helped them get a 7A loan, and we filed their ERTC for them. We take a tremendous amount of pride in that, because that is a crystal clear example of what we set the firm up to do, which is to help gain access to capital, to help demystify complicated, difficult process in order to get access to that capital in multiple ways. And I think over time, we call them our members, which expands every week. So we have lots of new people coming into the portal looking for capital every week. In addition to our 115,000 original members, we hope to help demystify lots of other forms of capital. So as I said earlier, SBA 7A capital is difficult to obtain. There are other forms of financing, some better than others, but ultimately, debt is an equity alternative when you're thinking about growth, and therefore, even expensive debt can be quite accretive and can be very beneficial in achieving, a growth strategy of a small business. And so, we're very focused on the customer journey, simplifying it, making it easier and less complicated, and then ultimately scaling this environment for as many people as we see, in the market. And the market is gigantic. I'm trying the most exaggerated word I can use. I mean, there are tens of millions of small businesses that don't have access to capital for a number of reasons.
Well, let me interrupt you. You said your website very quickly. Will you say it again a little bit slower, and will you spell it out?
It is newitymarket.com, NEWITY market, MARKET.com.
Okay. I'm going to stop you here. I've had a running feud with the SBA for over 22 years, being in the small business space, because You've done 115,000 loans. That is like a drop in the bucket in the ocean to the number of American small businesses. Yet, if you go to a bank and ask to try for an SBA loan, it'll take you 7 months on average, and it'll take at least 26 pages of filled out data. And even then, you must know the loan officer of the bank in order to finally get the approval. I think the rate of application to final retention is only 1 in 7. If I've read um, what do you do that will make it easier for the average Joe Schmo small business owner?
Well, your question is a fantastic one as it pertains to what we've created, right? I mean, we created a technology-enabled platform to help facilitate the flow of capital and the servicing through forgiveness during PPP. We stood up that program in the middle of the pandemic, created all new technology, and everyone should be aware of the fact that it had never existed before, right? So unlike lots of other things in financial services, there was no, prior data or prior experience. It was all new, created out of the legislation in the CARES Act. I believe that the root of the problem is not the SBA. And I believe that, if anything, the SBA is working actively to try and facilitate the flow. I think my observation and our observation as a company is that, the bank market is not interested in mitigating or getting in the middle of the flow of the funds. And so even with all the incentives that exist, the number of banks that participate in small balance SBA 7A loans, which is $250,000 and below, from sort of our way of looking at it, there are very few loans that are actually issued. That is, so your 1 in 7 number, I believe, is massively understated, because your 1 in 7 is probably reflective of applications that get submitted as opposed to applications that are denied the day they walk in the door.
Yes.
So, the small business demand for credit is extraordinary, and most people have to find alternative means of credit or go without it, right? And so, suffer suboptimal capital structures when in fact there is a government program that is designed to help them. So in our year and a half of doing 7A, we are one of, if not the largest small balance issuer. So what do? We facilitate the flow, right? So you say 7 months, I can get you through an application and funded in weeks. And I'll do the small balance. I'll do a $50,000 SBA 7A loan. I'll do a $150,000. It's all a function of revenues, as I'm sure you know. So, revenues dictate the size of the loan and what a company can bear, right? So, you don't want to have an overly leveraged company relative to what your revenues and your net profits are. You want it to be, modestly financed, so that the debt itself doesn't become the problem. And so, what we do is facilitate that flow. I encourage everyone to go and to our website, annuitymarket.com, and start the customer journey. And by the way, the thing that is the most interesting that we've developed over the last year, in my opinion, about how to facilitate the flow is that we'll tell you very quickly whether you're eligible or not. So there are a number of criteria that dictate eligibility, assuming that someone is willing to do the work, right? So the reason why there are so few small balance loans in the market is the banks are not willing to do the work. A $50,000 loan, whether it's SBA mitigated or bank mitigated, is not a profitable loan for a bank. And it's not a piece of business that most commercial banks are interested in pursuing. So, what we will do is we'll tell you right away, within a very short period of time, whether you're going to qualify, right? There are credit score criteria. There are, business criteria. There's a set of things that we quickly obtain, and then we can score the business and tell you whether you qualify or not. If you don't qualify, we have other ideas. So We do have other areas that we can access to help you get access to capital, but first and foremost, we want to get you SBA 7A credit if you can get it, because it's fantastic financing in terms of structure and price relative to other credit in the market.
Well, let me ask you this question. Do you require a personal guarantee? See, that's the point that upon which a lot of people wreck.
You know, personal guarantees are a function of the size of the loan, and yes, they are required. It's part of the SBA. I will say though, I understand people's resistance to a personal guarantee. I also own a small business and do lots of business with big banks, and am, you know, often giving my personal guarantee in order to do corporate transactions. So, you know, I think that, you know, it is, I understand the reticence on the part of a small business owner to give a personal guarantee. I also understand why people ask for it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a, you know, it can be, of course, any borrower would rather not give a personal guarantee, right? If given a choice. I think that, you know, at the end of the day, many of these products require them now. And that probably will not go away in this environment. And so, you know, that's a question that gets asked early on, because if someone's not willing to do that, then they're not likely to get access. And, you know, there are other programs, there are grant programs and other things that small businesses can get access to that, you know, don't require personal guarantees. But for the most part, small business loans do. Because ultimately, you know, I think the logic is, you know, the owner operator is so mission critical to a small business, right? I mean, that's the reason. And I think that, you know, in many ways, a personal guarantee behaves like a key man clause in a more sophisticated corporate structure, right? So you wouldn't do a personal guarantee at a Fortune 500 company, but there might be a key man clause for the CEO that they can't leave the company while the loan is outstanding. That would be a pretty, you know, not a common covenant, but that would be not an unrealistic covenant that someone might put in place for a piece of bank debt.
Well, let's go sideways for just 1 minute. You said there are other programs. Let's say someone is turned down for a 7A. Do you then provide some alternative, help them? Explain that a little further for our audience, please.
Well, the first thing we do is we want every new member and every new entrant to our portal. We want to see if they qualify for a 7A and what the size of that 7A could be, right? And then we have to apply and get it. And we also want to see if they have either filed or are interested in filing ERTC. Those are right in front of us, and we know how to process them and how to get them. And they have different.
I'm sorry. What term are you referring to? RTT. I'm sorry.
ERTC, the Employee Retention Tax Credit.
Oh, okay.
So our first mission is to see, do you qualify for a 7A? How much? Our second mission, or in parallel, quite frankly, is have you filed an ERTC and what do you qualify for? And if you have filed one, we have a financing mechanism where we can help pull forward the payment. And if you haven't filed one, we can file it for you, or we can file it for you and pull forward the payment by purchasing it from you. So we try that first because we believe fundamentally that, you know, those two options are, you know, accessible for many, many businesses. And, you know, we know that the structures are very sound and good for businesses. If you need credit beyond that, you know, we have partnerships with merchant cash advance issuers. That's a big market. MCAs, as they're often referred to. Other forms of credit that, you know, could be credit cards, or, you know, things that provide consumer credit to a small business owner. We do equipment financing, which is another, you know, pretty powerful tool for small businesses. Often they access it when they buy the equipment. So, you know, it's sort of something that happens when they, you know, invest in plant and equipment. But some don't. And so we can, you know, help you optimize your balance sheet through the use of equipment financing as well. Really, when I take a step back, I think some of the words that are important to remember about us is that we help create access. We also help give advice along the way, right? So we really get to know these businesses. I mean, I referred to, a member who had sold, the bank had sold the loan to us, then we'd issued a second PPP and we'd done a 7A and filed their ERC. And, that's a very significant relationship. We've done a lot of work. Our people have been on the phone with them a lot in order to get those deals done. They've provided us a lot of information. We know a lot about their business. We have a perspective on, where we can be helpful and, what they might think of. And, we're constantly trying to improve our community, and, are trying to do things that are, uniformly beneficial to the small businesses in our community, then very specific to some industries, right? So, when we find someone who can be very helpful to restaurants in places like New York City, we help them get access to our members and provide, assistance and or credit where it's appropriate.
Well, your website again, because we're unfortunately running out of time. So your website again and how people can reach you.
Newitymarket.com, NEWITY market, MARKET.com. And please feel free to reach out to me. I'm accessible on the website and happy to engage with any small business owner to help you through a process or make sure you have the right team on our side helping you. And, we really look forward to helping people get access to capital.
Well, on that note, David Cody, we want to say thank you for me a very enlightening half hour. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a nice day.